So, why do most people starting businesses fail, and what does it take to succeed? So, I might not be the most successful person, I'm definitely not. But I have started many projects and businesses in life, and I've had friends that have done too, and I've seen enough over my time to see what makes people really successful and what makes people fail. Now, my prior thing I was doing before art and all the many things I'm doing now was fashion photography. And, I did get to a level where I shot Vogue brides, I shot Prince Charles, I shot a campaign in another country. And I was really actually getting to a point where I was becoming, I was hitting those points of success, which is kind of frustrating that was the time when I just didn't feel guided at all anymore to continue in that. But anyway, I do always follow my heart and things, and I do follow where I'm called to be, and I trust that. But I didn't have any skill level when I got started, zero. I completely taught myself to take photos. I did have a degree, but it wasn't in photography. And I completely taught myself Photoshop, I taught myself photography. And do you know how I did it? By doing and getting started. And of course I didn't get paid straight away. I started off doing things for free. But this is where a lot of people go wrong, and they make mistake number one. So mistake number one is not to get started at all, just to never start. And I know a surprising amount of people that just never start because they are so afraid, or they just believe that they are not ready. And being ready is what really sabotages so many people from being successful in life, feeling not ready. And the thing is, you will never be ready. I really almost promise you. I mean, there are some things where you do obviously need qualifications, like if you want to be a surgeon or a doctor. But for all these sort of more creative, self-employed things, which is what I have a lot more experience. If you want to be a doctor, don't watch this. I have no experience whatsoever. I don't know anyone that's been a doctor. But I know lots of people that are in the arts and the creative industries. So not getting started because you feel you're not ready is probably the biggest thing that I have seen stop people, along with getting started and it not growing fast enough and thinking they're not good enough and leaving. Those really are the main two things that make people quit and make people not successful. And I think people have this false belief that everybody that's successful sort of makes it very, very quickly. And this isn't really true. It's just that you don't see the bit before they made it because you weren't aware of them. So I used to have a friend whose circle of friends were all kind of singers, and they all wanted to be successful singers, right? And one of these became a very, very, very famous singer. And I'm not going to say names, but, many number ones. I'm sure nearly everybody has heard of this lady who's a singer. I'd say certainly heading towards A-list status in her peak. And you would probably think that this singer just started singing and was picked up with slick videos, amazing songs. But because I knew some of the backstory, I knew that they had been at it for years, pretty much 10 years before actually, singing for 10 years before really getting picked up and taken to that next level. And people don't see that because a lot of it tends to get wiped. And then, the person will kind of just jump into the market as if they're new. But mostly that isn't the case even with singers. There probably is the odd exception, but on the most part, people have had a massive path before they blew up, and it's just that you didn't know about it because they weren't known. So they were just this unknown person that you had no reason to really watch or look at. And that really, honestly, is like the number one mistake, is people don't realize that. They don't realize that when you get started, you have absolutely no clue what you're doing, and no one does. No one really has a clue what they're doing until they get going. Because even if you've got tons of skill, so I've moved into art now and I do a lot more art, and I had no idea what I was doing when I got started. I had some creative ability to paint or draw or whatever, or do things that I felt in my energy, but I didn't know things like what canvas to work on, what paints to buy, what brushes you need, what varnish. I didn't even know you needed to varnish paintings. But the thing is, if you don't get going and you don't get started, you don't learn these things. And the sooner you get going, the better, really, because nobody really cares. No one's going to really go back and be like, oh, well, look how bad that painting was 10 years ago. Or, oh my God, she varnished it in the wrong stuff. Because at that point, you're probably selling your stuff for so little that no one really, that's kind of why they're getting it for that cheap, because you don't really know what you're doing. It's like when I started with photography, I shot people for free at the beginning. And they can't really complain that it's for free because, I was new. And that's kind of the way you do it, and then when I started to charge a low rate, obviously they expected something, but their expectations were far lower than when I charge a lot. So you've got to get started, and that's really the main thing. And so many people quit because they just never get started, and they just never push through that really, really uncomfortable bit at the beginning where you have all that fear and resistance come up. You have what I call imposter syndrome, where you're not that craft yet. You're not a singer. You're not an artist. You're not a photographer, but you're wanting to be that, and you're getting going towards being that. But you almost feel, like you're an imposter in the craft. Everything feels really scary. Everything feels really daunting. You have issues like charging money and asking for money. And the thing is, you just don't really know what you're doing. But you have to push through this period. And honestly, so many people drop out at this period. And that's like that golden spot where you just got to keep going. And if you drop out at that point, you kind of let all that hard work go that you've built up. And that really is I feel that on YouTube right now, because I feel really called to jump on YouTube and to grow my channel, but I'm really at that point where it's something really new, and I'm, still got all the resistance to putting the videos out, and I don't really know how to do them properly. I don't know what the audience wants. I'm probably making way too long videos. I'm not editing them correctly. I'm not having my slick little titles. But I know that will come. I know that, if this is my calling and it's what I'm meant to do, that will come in time. And you can't know everything when you begin. You just can't. You just can't know everything about the industry. It's like with photography. I didn't know how to go and get models to shoot, and I shot from this website for years and years, and then suddenly, someone tells me you should be getting new faces from big agencies, and open my world. But if I hadn't have gotten started, I never would have known that. So you've got to build and you've got to go. And then the second thing I see that really stops people being successful is not being 100% authentic and not being yourself, and to end up almost starting to do too much of what other people want. And I really noticed this in photography, and it's why I refuse to let it happen to me with my art. I actually had to change industries completely because I had allowed this to happen to me way too much. So basically, the people that did very, very well in fashion photography were often super young. And the advantage that these people had was they still lived at home and they didn't have any bills, or they had incredibly low bills. And that meant that they could say no to lots of things, and they could really stick to their vibe, and they could stick to their style. And a lot of them had a certain amount of arrogance too, that they, I do remember one person that I used to do some shoots with saying that, I'm going to reach out and work with, this stylist, and they were one of the world's most famous stylists. And, I was kind of mind blown thinking you're a student, you're just really basic with editing. I'm like a realist, as if that person is going to want to work with you. But these people, sometimes the realities would merge. You've got to kind of fake it till you make it. And it's all part of manifesting. Once you believe you are this thing, you are this thing. If you believe you're amazing at your craft, that will align in time, and they will sync, the realities will sync up. Which is another point actually I want to slip in here. It's really important that you actually at some point, I'm not saying from day one, but that early on you actually decide you are that thing, and it's not just a hobby. So I am a photographer, I am an artist. If somebody asks you what do you do, I am an artist. Not, oh, well, I kind of want to be an artist, but you can just hear, right, that makes you sound like who's gonna be interested? You know what I mean? If you say, well, I'm sort of an artist, I do a bit of painting in my spare time. It doesn't matter what it is at the end of the day. If you're painting, you're an artist. If you're taking photos, you're a photographer. And I'm just using these examples because they're examples of things that I've done. You know, if you've made one YouTube video, you're a YouTuber. You know, you are that thing. And I'm not saying to identify in like an ego way of, you know, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a fashion photographer, because that's just a label and a layer of the ego. But it's important to, you know, merge those realities and assert yourself that you are confident with what you're doing, even if you're not, even if you're kind of faking it on some level. But yeah, these people, these young kids that lived at home and they didn't have any bills, they could honestly turn down jobs that I couldn't, because I needed to pay my bills. So I would take on any job. And I would change my style for the client because I'd do anything they wanted me to do, essentially. And I lost myself. And I saw it happen over time that I wasn't really creating from my soul anymore. And the people that ultimately went on to really, really make it were the people that didn't, you know, in hindsight, I say keep another job and just literally do the thing that you really, really feel is you. Because it's quite difficult to re-find you once you've lost you in your creative pursuit. And people are not really buying your photography. They're not really buying your art. They're not really buying your craft. They're kind of buying you. They're buying your energy. They're buying the energy that only you have, that you're putting into that thing. If somebody just wants photography in a very, very commercial set way, anyone can do that, you know, anyone can do that. And your rate is never going to really be that great. People that want to, you know, pay a lot for art, pay a lot for photography, they're not really paying for the skill as such. They're paying for, because, you know, anyone, let's use Photoshop. You can find someone on Fiverr that's probably amazing with Photoshop for very, very cheap. What they're buying is they're buying your energy and your creativity and your ideas and what comes from your soul. So as soon as you lose that, you might make short-term gains, but long-term you're going to fail. And I honestly saw this over and over again. And it's why, like I told you, I moved industries and I refuse to let this happen to me with art. I refuse to allow myself to start doing things that are not true to me, just for money, or to like, because I don't dare, I don't want to say no to somebody. And these things are really the biggest tips that I can give from all my experience and from watching so many upcoming creatives and, you know, people starting up little creative businesses and things like that, is just get started. Get through that hurdle when you feel like an imposter and you don't feel like you know anything and you just feel like you're such a newbie, and stay authentic, stay who you are. And remember, people, you're only going to go really high when you're really just being you and not kind of trying to be a formula or be something that someone else is asking you to be. So I hope those tips helped, and yeah, let me know what tips you've got. I'm sure I've got lots of people that are super creative and set their own businesses up on here as well. And yeah, I hope everyone is good, and I'll speak soon. Bye.